I'm coming through. Okay, we're going there. We're there with you right up till the morning hours, you know. Yes. So we want the people to know that chocolate tea must be preserved. Yes. But I tell you, I listen to this bishop, and I can't understand how these people make Muta look like him is a devil, him is a madman. Because if them man there go to Yale University and all these big university and have them this and them that behind them name and in front of them name and them talking these way, and I did not go to any of these universities, and we are sharing certain opinions that I think say is a devil thing I did go on with, and I hear this big bishop talking in front of hundreds of middle class Jamaican people and upper class Jamaican people and saying the exact things that Muta Baruka is saying on the radio and get cursed for, and I never hear nobody curse him. Even my brethren Reverend Chisholm was there. It's sweet day. It's sweet day. This is the cutting edge at RFM. Okay, without further ado now, we want to tell you that we're going to present this man here, as I said before. He was here Saturday giving a talk at the Meridian Pegasus Hotel, and he's a bishop, an Anglican bishop. He has many books out there, you know. Many books out there, and we are there the pleasure of listening to him. So we're going to make you hear what we hear when we was there. Cutting edge style.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody.
I must say to you that the one who is introducing him is Beverly Manley.
Now, I would rather die in a confrontation than die running away from it. When I become convinced of something, I have to hit it head on. I cannot be diplomatic. The words of Bishop John Spong. A scholar par excellence, Bishop Spong is someone who does not know any other way to live than to challenge everything, and I mean everything, in his quest for truth. Standing in a place of authenticity, Bishop Spong proceeds on what I call a Socratic type inquiry and goes wherever the logic of his research, which is usually original research, takes him. Prior to undertaking research, Bishop Spong subjected himself to the most rigorous study at some of the most prestigious universities in the world. Just to mention a few: Yale University in the United States, Oxford and Cambridge universities in the UK. Because he recognizes the need to study and to prepare. He understands that having collected the data, it's not enough to just collect it, like some of us do, but then you write it and you publish it so that others can learn and continue the conversations out of it. He is an educator, a teacher. And as a teacher, like his way shower, Jesus the Christ, he utilizes many methods for teaching. So he gets involved in television debates. At one stage, he introduced classes 1 hour before his church services begin. He's always traveling, conducting seminars like the one we have here today. I said that he stands in a place of authenticity. But Bishop Spong also represents for me courage and commitment. He's a bold man, one of a line of famous out-of-the-box thinkers who have the courage to stand for what they believe no matter what. As an independent thinker, his biblical scholarship reminds us of the need to apply analytical rigor to everything, to think, to question, to explore, to analyze. In taking on such issues as gender, race, and sexuality, he lives a life that is as controversial as it is informative and thought-provoking. Christine, I have a little experience of what it is like to live with that kind of man. And so at this stage, I would like to specially just thank you for being here and for the critical role we know you play in the life of this man. For the purposes of this seminar, therefore, I suggest that to get the best out of it, apart from just listening, that we just decide this morning to become like Bishop Spong. What do I mean by that? Be prepared for any eventuality. Be open and receptive. Engage in the inquiry, either by listening or talking, as he moves us from myth to reality. Let us receive this information, experience this information, know this information, become this information, so that when we leave this place, we too can spread the gospel, the good news. We ask you to stand and give a real, warm Jamaican welcome to John and Christine Spong.
Thank you very much. I just told Beverly I'd love to take her with me so she could introduce me everywhere I go. I'm delighted to be here, and Christine is delighted to be here. We have been in Jamaica now for 5 days, and we've seen a lot of the beauty and wonder of this place. And I've sort of paid off a debt to a priest who served in my diocese named Gervais Clark, who is kind of a walking Chamber of Commerce advertisement for Jamaica every time I saw him. And I promised him that someday I would come and see this land that he loves so much and talks about so frequently. And it's been a privilege and a pleasure to see it. We've seen alligators and waterfalls and places where you catch your lunch and they cook it for you if you're lucky. And we've toured with some wonderful people, and we've had an opportunity to have dinner with a number of folks, and it's just been a real privilege and a real pleasure. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. The format for today is going to be divided into 2 parts. Each part will have a presentation and a question and answer period, and there are microphones in the audience so that people can go to the microphones when the question period comes and raise questions so that everybody can hear them. And then we'll have a coffee break in the middle, and then we will repeat the process for the second presentation and question period. And what I've decided to do is to talk about the Bible. Now that may be carrying coals to Newcastle, but I don't think so. Because I think people have some sense about what the Bible is, but very little knowledge of the Bible, particularly in its content, in its formation. The Bible has 66 books in it. 79 if you count the Apocrypha. And obviously in one morning I'm not going to be able to cover all of the material in 66 or 79 books. And for that reason I've placed a whole bunch of things over on the wall that you can just look at whenever you have time during the breaks, and perhaps let that filter in. The Bible is not an easy thing to talk about, because the Bible is used by a lot of people in strange ways, sometimes to diminish and to hurt other people. The Bible is not an unmixed blessing. Religion is not an unmixed blessing. Please recognize that on September the 11th, it was very religious people who commandeered airplanes and drove them into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon for the sole purpose of killing people in the name of their God. And people say, oh, that's terrible. Maybe that's the way Muslims act. Certainly Christians wouldn't act like that. Well, look at our history. Religion is sometimes a very dark force in life. I grew up in an evangelical Anglican church. In that evangelical Anglican church, I learned to love the Bible. My mother gave me a copy of the King James Version of the Bible for my Christmas present when I was 12 years old. It was one of those big, fat books with floppy leather covers and a gold cross on the front, and gold-gilded pages and red letters wherever Jesus spoke, the kind of old-fashioned Bible. And I placed that Bible beside my bedstand, and I have read that Bible almost every day of my life since I was 12 years old. It is a book I treasure. It is a book I know inside and out. I suspect I've read it through more than 25 times. I know its history. I know its content. I know what it means to be used as a book of life, and I know what it means to be used as a book of death. It is a great book, and I stand before you as one who treasures it. Please do not hear what I say today as coming from an external critic of the Christian faith. I am one on the inside of this Christian faith. I am one who treasures the Bible, who reads the Bible with great integrity every day of my life, and I want to share some of that insight with you. But even though I love the Scriptures, I also was raised in an evangelical Anglican church that taught me some strange things. My church taught me, for example, that segregation was the will of God. And when I ever doubted that teaching, the Bible was quoted to prove to me that God intended for the races to be segregated. I was raised in North Carolina in a very segregated society. And the process of moving into a different understanding of what human life is all about was made difficult for me by my church. It was a segregated church. My mother and father were good church-going people. My mother and father taught me good manners. They taught me, for example, that I should never speak to an adult without saying sir or ma'am to them. Whenever an adult asked me a question, I would say yes sir or no sir, yes ma'am or no ma'am, whatever was appropriate. And yet, I remember a time when I was no more than 3 to 4 years of age, when an elderly African-American man said something to me, and I responded to him by saying yes sir or no sir. And my father took me rather forcibly into the house and lectured me sternly. You do not say sir, he said, to what he called a Negro. That was like a grain of sand underneath the sole of my shoe. I couldn't put that together with the things that I was learning about how one respects one's elders and how God loves all people. I will never forget a time when I was only 10 years old, and I think in the 5th grade of my school, and World War II had just broken out, and another school in town invited my school to send some representatives to their school to participate in a patriotic assembly. For some reason, I was one of the 3 children chosen. As far as I was concerned, it was just a good way to get out of school for a day. I didn't know anything about what was going on. I had no sense of what this was all about. And so we drove from my school to another school. And when I got there, that's the first time I realized that our schools were segregated. It just hadn't occurred to me to think about that. But when I arrived at this school, it was clearly a school for little black children. I'd never seen so many black children in my life. And all the teachers were black people, and all the principals and all the administrative staff were black people. And that's the first time it entered into my consciousness that I was a product of a segregated school system. I was 10. It was fascinating to me to go into that assembly program because the first thing that we did, we were the honored guests, the first thing we did was that we were told to stand and we would say together the Lord's Prayer. And I was a good Sunday school kid, so I knew the Lord's Prayer. So I stood up to say the Lord's Prayer. And that's the first time I realized that there's only one God, and people of all colors pray to the same God. And if God is the God of us all, how can we be alienated, separated, or segregated one from another? It was an interesting insight to permeate the consciousness of a 10-year-old boy and to try to make him understand that something about the religion in which he was being raised did not jibe with the reality of the world in which he was living. Oh, I heard the Bible quoted to uphold and support segregation. You see, my grandparents had heard the Bible quoted to uphold and to support slavery. We need to recognize that the man who wrote what is the United States' favorite hymn, and perhaps the favorite hymn in Jamaica, Amazing Grace, that man was a slave trader early in his life. We need to recognize that the Pope has had slaves. We need to recognize that the church is not innocent in treating people as less than human. And we need to remember that the church quoted the Bible as it walked through its history, justifying this kind of treatment of other human beings. So the Bible is not an unmixed blessing. I also learned in my church as I was growing up that women were not equal to men, that women were inferior. Women were not allowed to vote in my country until 1920. Women weren't allowed to have a university education in my country until the 20th century. Women could not hold property in their own names in my country until around 1875. Women could not practice law or medicine. Those were considered inappropriate professions. They certainly couldn't be commentators or hosts on a television program. Those were things that were by definition. And whenever people were pressed to say why this is so, they would quote the Bible. And some of the things they would quote would be rather fascinating. They would quote the second creation story. It happens to be the oldest creation story. The first creation story is the 7-day creation story, but it's one of the last things to be written in the Bible, probably not written before the 6th century, before the birth of Jesus. But the second creation story, the one of Adam and Eve, that's the creation story that kept being quoted, and that's the oldest one. That's written somewhere around 950 before the birth of Jesus. And what does that second creation story say? Well, it's rather fascinating. It says that in the beginning, God created the man in God's image and placed the man in the Garden of Eden. And the man had everything he wanted in the Garden of Eden. He had all the food and all the water, everything he could possibly want, but he was alone. He didn't have anybody there to be with him. And so the man said to God, God, it's very lonely down here in the garden. And God says, okay, Adam, I'll make you a friend. And God gets busy, and he makes a polar bear. Brings the polar bear up to Adam. And Adam looks at that polar bear and says, that's a very nice polar bear, Lord, but that's not just the kind of friend I had in mind. So God says, okay, I'll try again. And God makes the giraffe and the baboon and the monkey and the chimpanzee and the dog and the cat and the horse and the camel and all the animals of the world. That story says that the animals all came into the world in all of their variety of species because Adam wanted a friend and God couldn't please Adam. No matter what God made, Adam said, it's a very nice horse, a very nice dog, a very nice cat, but Lord, that's not what I have in mind. And God said, Adam, you are very hard to please. And Adam said, well, Lord, how can I describe what I've never seen? And so this biblical story says that God said, okay, Adam, I'm going to try one more time. God seemed to be into trial and error in that period of history. I'm going to try one more time. And this time the story says God put Adam to sleep and took a rib from Adam's side and created the woman. As one woman theologian said, it was childbirth as only a man who's never had a baby could have imagined it. So out of this rib, God creates the woman. And in that story, if you know how to read the Bible without being too literal about it, God fashions this woman in all of her feminine beauty. And God stands this woman up in front of Adam, and then God takes Adam and shakes him by the shoulder to wake him up. And Adam wakes up. And the King James Bible says, and Adam said, behold, Lord, that's bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. I shall call her name woman. But that's not what it says in Hebrew. In Hebrew, a slang expression is used. You get the impression that Adam woke up and he looked at this woman and the eyes came out of his sockets like boing! And Adam said, "Hot diggity, Lord, you finally did it." But the woman was created to be the man's helpmate. She was human-like, but not really human. She was above the horse and the dog, but not equal to the man. And the man's duty toward the woman was to be kind to her like he would to any other dumb animal. That's not a very flattering portrait, but that's the portrait of where a woman has come from. And in Christian history, a male-dominated church has constantly said to women, "You are not equal." Defective sperm. Isn't that an interesting idea? You see, he didn't know about Y chromosomes. He didn't know that it's the male that determines the sexuality of the offspring, because the male has an XY chromosome. And if the X mates with the wife X, and the wife has double X's, you always get a woman. And if the Y mates with the woman's X, you get a male. It's the male that determines the sexuality, but of course women got blamed for that. If a woman didn't produce a son, in the old world, she'd be divorced, even though it was the husband's fault. But that's the way it went. The woman was the property of the man. Her role in life was to serve the man. Now, is that a very adequate understanding of human life? Oh, another one of the great church fathers said that women, you have to understand, he said, women, they're really castrated males. Isn't that an interesting definition? And they went to this man, who wasn't terribly bright, went on to say that the reason a woman has her menstrual cycle is that her body mourns each month for its lost organ. Now, it's with mythology like that that we built oppression of women into the life of the church and into the life of the society. In my church, the Anglican Church, we did not ordain women to the priesthood until 1977. We did not have any women bishops in my church until 1989. That's hardly ancient history. And today there are only 9 women bishops in the whole Anglican Communion, and none of them are here in Jamaica. And as the church debated whether or not women should be priests, they went back to this same old definition, that a woman is not created in the image of God. Oh, I find that sort of hysterical when you think about it. The way I try to test that is that I say, okay, let's bring a man and a woman and stand them here in front of me. And let's take away from the man everything he's got in common with the woman. Take away his hair, and his head, and his eyes, and his nose, and his mouth, and his throat, and his larynx, his heart, and his lungs, and his stomach, and his intestines, his legs, his knees, his ankles, his feet. Take away everything the man and the woman have in common until you get the only thing that they don't have in common, and then ask yourself, how godlike is that? And yet, on the basis of the fact that the woman is somehow not created in the image of God, the majority of the churches of the world today still do not allow women to be priests or bishops. Now, you know, we even wrote into the Bible,
powerful people never educate powerless people in what they need to take the power away from them. The aim of powerful people is to stay powerful by any means necessary.
Now, you know, we even wrote into the Bible our negativity toward women. We even wrote it into the 10 Commandments. Every now and then I run into a politician that says, I'm going to run on the platform of obeying the 10 Commandments. You better look out for that politician. He better read the 10 Commandments, or she better read the 10 Commandments, because the Commandments define a woman as the property of a man. And you say, where in the world is that in the 10 Commandments? Well, read Commandment number 10. Commandment number 10 in the short version says, Thou shalt not covet. But read it in the biblical version. It says, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife. Now think about that for a moment. And remember, first of all, that nowhere in any book of the Bible is there any prohibition against anyone coveting their neighbor's husband. It's okay biblically to covet your neighbor's husband. You just can't covet your neighbor's wife. Have you ever wondered why there's no prohibition against coveting husbands and all this prohibition against coveting wives? It's because in the world that gave us the Ten Commandments, the woman was property. So the commandments were addressed only to the men. Only to the men. The woman got into the covenant relationship with God only by being the property of her father or of her husband. And we still have this custom in our weddings where one man gives the woman away to another man as if she's a sack of potatoes. It's a strange custom. We ought to get rid of that custom. That's the ancient carryover of the idea that a woman is property. So God didn't think it was important to command only men not to covet their husbands, anybody's husband. So the commandment says to these men, you are not to covet anybody's wife. Now, if you don't believe that that's the way the commandment is written, read the rest of it. It says, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his ox. By God, that'll tell you where the woman ranks. At least she's a little higher than the ox. Nor his ass. Now, that's a donkey, in case any of you wonder. And the commandment goes on to say, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Your neighbor is a male, and the woman, the ox, and the ass, and the other possessions are all male possessions. Do you want to salute that moral code today? I don't. I have 4 daughters. It took me a long time to see how chauvinistic I was. I didn't see it when I looked at it through my mother's eyes because she raised me to be the man of the house. And I didn't see it through my wife's eyes because I thought she was supposed to be my helpmate. But I'd like to tell you, having daughters will do something to the soul of the worst chauvinist in the world. My daughters aren't interested in being a part of a church that says women are not equal to men. My youngest daughter happens to be a captain in the United States Marine Corps. She's a helicopter pilot. She's battle ready and on assignment that could take her to Afghanistan. Now, you're not going to talk to my captain daughter and tell her that the Bible says women are not to have authority over men. You know, she orders men around with some regularity. And men's lives depend upon her ability to fly that helicopter into battle. We live in a different kind of world. So the 10th commandment defines women as property. So does the 7th commandment. Oh, people say, where does it say that in the 7th commandment? Because everybody knows at least 2 of the commandments. You know, when I ask people if they all think the 10 commandments are important, they all raise their hands. And I say, okay, if they're so important, how many of you can name them? You'd be surprised how many of those hands go down. But then they can always get 2. They can always get murder and adultery. They always know those. Sometimes then they put some other commandments that have never seen the 10. But anyway, commandment number 7 says, you shall not commit adultery. That sounds pretty clear. That sounds pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot of deviation in that. It seems not much room for maneuver. Until you recognize one thing. When that commandment was given, you shall not commit adultery, the style of marriage was polygamy. A man could have as many wives as he could afford because women were property. And so the commandment comes into a world where a man can have as many wives as he can afford. And 300 years after the 10 Commandments were supposed to have been given to Moses at Mount Sinai, King Solomon had 1,000 wives. Well, you got to help me understand what adultery means when one man owns 1,000 women. If you have 1,000 wives and still have some need to commit adultery, you got a problem. And may I suggest that's not even a moral problem. You got a bigger problem than that. You see, what that commandment really means in the world that produced it was that one man cannot violate the woman who is the property of another man. That's what that commandment means. So I grew up in a church that taught me that women were born to serve men, and that the woman's role was to be the helpmate. And the Bible was quoted. Ephesians was quoted, wives, obey your husbands. 2 Corinthians was quoted, I forbid a woman to have authority over a man. I forbid a woman to speak in church. They all have been quoted to keep women in second-class status.
Fiery FM, thought-provoking, always smoking, lyrics like a bazooka. You are listening to Muta Baruka.
Well, my church taught me some other things. My church taught me that I had the only true religion. That anybody that didn't agree with me was going to hell. And that's a very popular one. And it's really fascinating to watch the variations of that go on in the Christian world. Almost every church I know believes that they are the true church, that they have the truth, that there's no salvation outside their understanding of the gospel. And that gets really pretty silly sometimes. What do you think it does to the world to look at Ireland and to see Protestant Christians and Catholic Christians killing each other every day in the name of the God that we meet in Jesus Christ? What kind of witness is that? Recently there was a picture that showed Protestant parents spitting on Catholic children. What kind of followers of Christ is this? And it's not just Christians, though we have had plenty of it. You go to the West Bank, and you see people who worship the God of the Jews deciding to kill people who worship the God of the Muslims. Are there two gods in this world? Or are those just two versions of the same God? What makes us think that my understanding of God is perfect, and that anybody that disagrees with my understanding of God is somehow worthy of my hostility and even my wrath and even my punitive power that are issues in death? And it's not just there. Go over to India. Go to the boundary between India and Pakistan. Go to the province of Bangladesh. And there you will find Hindus who say, my God requires me to kill you who are Muslims. And Muslims say, my God requires you to kill you who are Hindus. What kind of God is that? Well, sometimes when you look at the biblical story, you get the image that that's the God the Bible's talking about. Go back and look at the story of the plagues in Egypt. Moses goes down at God's command, says that story, to negotiate with the Pharaoh to get the slave people free. And God gives Moses some negotiating power that many a labor negotiator wishes they had. You know, Moses has the ability to turn the Nile River into blood. And all the life of the Nile River dies. And Egypt depended upon the life of the Nile River. So the frogs began to come out of the river, and then the frogs died, and then the flies came in, and then the people got boils, and the animals got murine. That was the first instance of mad cow disease in the ancient world. And then there were sandstorms, and then the sun seemed to go out. God just beat up on the Egyptians, one plague after another. And finally, when that story gets to the end, God says to Moses, okay, Moses, now, we haven't been able to get the people of Israel free from these Egyptians, even though the Bible said that the Pharaoh had said, okay, Moses, I'm willing to let them go. And then the Bible says, but God hardened the Pharaoh's heart so God could hit him one more time. What kind of strange God is that? Well, in this final plague, God says, Moses, I'm going to really get them this time. You really don't understand why God needs 10 plagues. If God is all-powerful, one plague should have been enough. God's got to do over and over and over and over. But this final one is going to be the clincher. And Moses says, what in the world are you going to do, God? And God says, tonight I'm going to send my angel of death throughout the land of Egypt. And we're going to kill the firstborn male in every household. Now raise your hands, those of you who are firstborn males. I want you to hear this story from a personal perspective. And God says to Moses, okay, Moses, you got a problem. I mean, Moses says to God, you got a problem. Some of those houses have Jews in them. How are you going to tell the difference between a Jewish house and an Egyptian house? And God says, well, I thought about that, Moses, and I'll tell you what I want you to do. This day, right before the angel begins the death march, I want you to have all the Jewish people kill the Paschal lamb. And I want you to take the blood from the slaughtered lamb and put it all over the doorpost of Jewish homes. Because my angel of death is not enough to know the difference between a Jewish home and an Egyptian home. He's got to have a bloody doorpost to tell him. And when my angel of death sees that bloody doorpost, my angel will pass over that Jewish home and only kill Egyptians. Well, that's not a very pleasant view of God if you happen to be an Egyptian. But see, that story is written from an Egyptian's point of view. What kind of God is it that chooses one people and hates everybody else? What kind of God is that? That's a tribal God. That's a God who says, only those who look like me and act like me and talk like me and worship like me are God's people. And anybody that doesn't look like me and talk like me and worship like me, then they are not God's people. And if God has rejected them, then it's okay for you and me to reject them, and that's where the bitterness and the hostility and the warfare and the pain and the slavery and the other things that we do to one another in this world comes from. You see, what we've done is to take an ancient tribal history, and we've acted as if every word of that tribal history is the word of God, and therefore we quote it to justify our own hatreds and our own prejudices. There's only one God, brothers and sisters, only one God, and nobody possesses him or her, whatever God is. Nobody possesses God. And anytime you or I begin to believe that we possess God, then we are terrible in hostility toward other people. That's just the nature. Religion is not an unmixed blessing. We have killed people in the name of our God. We have fought religious wars. We have burned people at the stake. But let me tell you, God is not a Christian. God's not a Muslim either. God's not a Jew, though they probably have a better case than we have. God is not a Buddhist. God is not a Hindu. All of those are pathways that various people in the world have tried to walk through to find that which is holy. And I'd like to tell you there are some holy Jews and holy Muslims and holy Buddhists and holy Hindus, and there are some terrible Christians and some terrible Hindus and some terrible Muslims. But it's not because the religious system is evil. It's because none of us has walked deeply enough through our religious system into the holiness of God. So my Bible taught me that it was okay to hate anybody who didn't agree with me religiously. And particularly we Christians have done terrible things to Jews. Back in the 14th century, Western Europe experienced something called the bubonic plague. It was a devastating sickness. It made the AIDS epidemic look like a Sunday school tea party by comparison. 1 out of every 4 adults in Europe died of the plague. Now, those people had no idea what a germ was or a virus. They hadn't discovered that yet. The only thing they knew about sickness was that it was God's punishment. They were sure that if you got sick, you had done something evil and God was punishing you. And so when people began to die, when 1 out of every 4 persons began to die, the great question is, what have we done? What is our sin? How can we undo it so that God will take this terrible plague away from us? And do you know what the Christians decided? They decided that their sin was that they had tolerated infidels. And the only infidels were the Jews.
Putting things into perspective. Continue, RFM. Yeah, well, carry forward to the reason. Yeah.
In the 20th century, the enlightened 20th century, and murdered 6 million Jews. Try to understand how that would feel. On September the 11th, the United States probably lost 5,000 citizens. The number keeps getting scaled down. We are a nation of almost 300 million people, and we lost about 5,000 citizens. Now, do not minimize. The loss of any citizen is terrifying, particularly to those who love that person. It's life-rending, and I don't mean to minimize it. But try to imagine losing 5,000 people out of a nation of 300 million, and try to imagine what it's like to be a Jew, for whom there were 12 million people in the world in 1940, and 6 million of them died in Hitler's crematoriums. And the Christian leaders of Germany, with very few exceptions, never raised their voice to protest that terrible tragedy in Christian history, because there'd been a long, long line of statements coming out of Christians about how evil the Jews were. My church taught me that it was okay to hate people who worship God differently. The Bible is not an unmixed blessing. The last statement I'd like to develop just a little bit is that in the church in which I was raised, an Anglican evangelical church in the Old South in the United States, in that church, I was also taught to hate myself. And I would suggest to you that that's the primary message that every Christian has gotten for most of the past 2,000 years. And you say, well, how did the church teach me to hate myself? So the church spends most of its time telling you what a lousy, miserable sinner you are. You can't come to church in an Anglican tradition, and I love Anglican liturgy, but you can't come without having your humanity insulted. We say, there is no health in us. We have done those things we ought not to have done, and we have not done those things we ought to have done. There is no health in us. We are miserable offenders. We aren't worthy even to gather up the crumbs underneath the divine table. We are helpless and hopeless. We are fallen sinners. We are born in sin. God has to rescue us, and it takes God an awful lot. God has to allow His own Son to be killed. We are so awful. And we've got to be cleansed with the blood of this Lamb. What kind of message is that? It's epidemic in the Christian faith. We start out with that understanding of human life that we were created perfect. And then we fell into sin through the disobedience of our first parents. And that we have been condemned ever since. What kind of God is it that will condemn you and me because Adam and Eve ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? What kind of God is that? Is that a God you want to worship? God's going to beat you for their sins. Well, in reality, most of us wind up doing enough things to deserve our own punishment. But are we helped by being told how evil we are? Suppose you have a brand new precious baby in your life, and you bring that baby home, and you accept the burdens and the responsibilities of parenthood, and you want to be a good mother or a good father. So you go get a book on how to raise a proper child, and you read the book, and the book says every day of your child's life reminds your child that your child was born in sin, that your child's a miserable offender, that there's no health in your child, that your child actually caused the death of Jesus. Do you think I'd raise a healthy human being? Good heavens! What a burden we put on our children. Children aren't born in sin. They're born with loudspeakers on one end and no sense of responsibility on the other. But they are not born in sin. We can twist them and warp them and break them. But those little precious lives, they don't need to be told how evil they are. They need to be loved into their full humanity. And we've got the emphasis all wrong. And what kind of God is it who can't forgive until somebody offers this God a human sacrifice? What kind of God is it that requires the death of the divine Son in order to forgive the fallen creation? What kind of God is that? Is that the God you meet in the life of Jesus of Nazareth? Or have we put something else onto the story of Jesus that has created an enormous amount of negativity? Now, please don't misunderstand. Once again, I am not saying that human beings are angels. I think human beings are capable of being the most horrible creatures in all of God's world. I don't know cows or dogs that act like human beings. You know, in the United States in recent years, we had some human beings take a man whose name was James Byrd and attach him by a chain to the back end of a pickup truck and drag him across a gravel dirt road until he was not only dead but dismembered. And they did that because they didn't like the color of his skin. I've never seen a dog act like that, or a horse. Only human beings know how to be that evil. We had another episode. We had a young man, 21 years old, an Anglican, an acolyte, active in his church. He was set upon by a group of people in Colorado, and they beat him until he was unconscious. And then they hung him up on a fence post in sub-freezing weather in Wyoming, and they left him there until he died. His name was Matthew Shepard. And the people who attacked him did not like his sexual orientation. I don't think dogs do that. Please don't misunderstand. Human beings are capable of enormous evil. But I don't think that comes because you and I are fallen sinners. I think that comes because you and I have not yet become fully human. And what we need is not to be rescued from our fall and restored to something we've never been. What we need is to be empowered to step beyond our boundaries and our fears and our insecurities into a new humanity and to become whole and free people. And when you're fully human, you don't need to pretend you're superior to anybody else. You don't need to say, my tribe's better than your tribe. You don't need to say, my gender's better than your gender. You don't need to say, my prejudices are real because you are inferior. And you don't need to say, my God's better than your God, so I'll try to kill you. No, what we need today is not to have sinners rescued. What we need is to have human beings who don't yet know what it means to be human, called and empowered to become something that they have never yet been, full and free and whole and loving and capable of stepping across all of the boundaries of race and gender and prejudice and religion and create a new humanity. Now, I think we've got to retell the whole Jesus story. He didn't rescue the fallen. He came to love us into loving, to show us how to live so that we could live fully, to enable us to be all that we are. Now, that's an interesting way to introduce the Bible. That sounds pretty negative. Let me just repeat, the Bible is not an unmixed blessing. It's been used as a weapon of terror. It's also been used as a book of life. So let me conclude this first presentation by saying, what are the three basic truths that I think you've got to find in Scripture? And you don't find them by reading the literal words. You find them by going into the text and touching the very depth of the experience that the Bible is written to communicate. What does the Bible communicate to us? What are the three basic biblical lessons that we need to learn? Well, the first one is the gift of the Hebrew people to us. And that lesson says that every life is holy, every life. That every life bears the divine image, that we are all made in God's image. No matter what our external differences, we are all holy people. And part of what we've got to do as worshipers of God is to see God present in every other human life. And if you cannot see God present in every other human life, you've missed the first and primary lesson of the Bible. We were made in God's image. We must relate to each other as if every person is holy. I loved being in India some years ago, because the Indian people don't shake hands vigorously like Western people do. You know where the handshake comes from? When you stick out your hand like this, that shows that you aren't drawing your sword over here to hit them. That's where the handshake comes from. So you stick it out as if you're friendly so you don't cut their gizzards out. It's a very hostile sort of gesture. But in the East, in India, when two human beings meet, they fold their hands in the posture of prayer and they bow to each other. What does that mean? That's their way of saying, the Holy God dwells in you. The Holy God dwells in you. What a powerful symbol. What a great way to practice the first lesson out of Holy Scripture, that every life is holy, every life bears the divine image. So you cannot enslave or segregate or oppress or repress or hurt or kill that which bears the divine image. So the first lesson of Scripture is that all life bears God's image. The second and the primary gift of the Gospels to me is that what Jesus really means is you are loved. That's what Jesus means. Outside the boundaries of the love of God. That's the Jesus message. And he lives it out. People forsake him and he loves them. They deny him and he loves them. They betray him and he loves them. They torture, he loves them. They kill.
Powerful people never educate powerless people in what they need to take the power away from them. The aim of powerful people is to stay powerful by any means.
I recognize our first question.
Yes, you mentioned about the Adam and Eve story and how it has oppressed the concept of the feminine. Wouldn't you say that in the need to revive that feminine quality, the Christians have also made a blunder in recognizing a virgin birth? I am seeing that the virgin birth is a next aspect of the degrading of the woman and the feminine quality.
I think you're right. But I'd like not to address that question until the second session, because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about in the second session. What I'm going to do is try to take some of these principles and go through the birth stories of Jesus and show how they're in conflict with a lot of things. But yes, I'd say the virgin birth story is a sexist story. At its heart, it's a sexist story, and it's been used throughout history to denigrate women. Let me build on that just a little bit, because I won't be able to do it this afternoon. And then I'll come to the next question. This will just be brief. When the church decided that there was only one ideal woman, and she was a virgin mother, it sort of meant every other woman was reduced to being less than ideal. It's very hard to be a virgin mother. You know, most people just can't put that together. So if only one woman is ideal and she is a virgin mother, every other woman is reduced to being something insignificant or evil or deformed or not quite whole. That's the first bad lesson of that. And then the second bad lesson of that is that what the church did to the virgin over history was to say she was a virgin mother, and then we said she was a postpartum virgin, and then we said she was a perpetual virgin, and then we said she was immaculately conceived. We didn't do that until the 19th century. And then in the 20th century we said she was bodily assumed into heaven. Only then did she become fully an object of worship. Now let me ask you what there is about woman that is so negative in the minds of men who are building these doctrines, that before a woman can be considered a possible object of worship, she has to be desexed and dehumanized. Because by the time you get through with what we did to Mary, she's neither a human being nor a woman. Finally, I would say, who is making these definitions of the ideal woman? The priesthood of the church was. What was the priesthood of the church? They were celibate males. I submit to you that a permanent virgin is an ideal woman only to a celibate male. Yes, sir.
Why is it necessary to reform Christianity? Why not just recognize all humanity and universal truth?
It's a good question. Why do you bother to reform Christianity? Why don't you just recognize universal truth? My experience with human beings is that we never do it that way. That always we evolve out of who we are into something new. Christianity has not been static for 2,000 years. There are a lot of people that try to make you think that it has. They say, this is Christianity and you are deviating from Christianity. Well, that's balderdash. Christianity has been in the process of flux and formation for 2,000 years, and it is always in change. There is no time when you can cut and say, that is what Christianity is. In the early years of the Christian church, one of the great debates they had was whether or not Adam and Eve had a navel. Because you see, the navel is the last remnant of the fact that you were attached to your mother. And since Adam and Eve were supposed to have been created without being born, they should not have had navels. That was a great big battle in the early church. But I haven't met any theologian that's arguing about that in the last couple hundred years. You know, that just is not an issue. There was a time when Christianity said that if you get interest on your money, you're doing something evil. Well, I don't know anybody that follows that rule today. Certainly the Vatican's got all their money invested in banks and stocks, and so does every other church I know. So that, you know, we've changed a lot. All I'm saying is that evolution is the law of religion. Judaism didn't start in the wilderness with the burning bush. Judaism started in Egypt. There was a pharaoh named Amenhotep IV who had this vision of God as one and distant. And he was thrown out of Egypt by a revolution of the clergy because they were sort of being put out of work. They had a god at every little shrine, and they depended on the business that God brought in. So they rebelled against this great Pharaoh. And Moses was a disciple of that Pharaoh. So Moses went out into the wilderness with the slave people. And he put that understanding of God into the Jewish people. So its roots are in Egypt. And then when the Jews entered into Canaan, they ran into fertility cults, the Baal worship. And so Judaism evolved in terms of the fertility religions. And then they were exiled into Babylon. And they ran into Zoroastrianism. And Judaism evolved as it interacted with Zoroastrianism. And then Christianity was born in the womb of Judaism. And then Christianity had to move out of Judaism into the Mediterranean world, and it began to be a Gentile religion. And so it had to incorporate into itself a lot of the thought forms of Mediterranean religion, the Mithra movement, some of the mystery cults. And Christianity has been evolving through the centuries. St. Augustine put us in touch with Plato's thought by making Plato and Christianity come together. That's the 4th century. In the 13th century, Thomas Aquinas decided that Plato isn't read by anybody anymore. Everybody now is reading Aristotle, so I've got to rethink Christianity in terms of Aristotle. And so Thomas Aquinas began to put Christianity into Aristotelian terms. And then we had the great Renaissance, when new learning came from the East and people had all sorts of different ideas, and Christianity had to incorporate that. And there's a sense in which the Protestant Reformation was the Christian attempt to incorporate the new learning of the Renaissance. All I'm suggesting is that what we have going on today is that enormous new learning has come in, and we Christians have got to rethink our faith symbols in terms of that new understanding. And one of those new understandings that we have to deal with is that the world has gotten very, very small, and we can no longer spit on the gods of other people. We've got to find a way to respect them and grow together, because they have something of great value to offer to us, and I hope we have something of great value to offer to them.
Fiery appeal,
Leading you
thought-provoking, always smoking. Lyrics like a bazooka. You are listening to Muta Baruka.
Did you have a question?
The question is really the creation story. Adam and Eve. Also the
What about
earth.
it? What about the creation?
From what I understand, you don't believe in Adam and Eve
That's
as
correct.
part of the creation.
That's correct.
There was no Adam, no Eve.
That's correct. You want me to talk about that?
Yes.
That's your question. Okay. Please recognize, and this is one of the things I've got up on the board, this planet Earth has been in existence, according to the best scientific measures, 4.5 to 5 billion years. Human life has been on this planet, according to the best scientific evidence, somewhere between 2 million years ago and 50,000 years ago, depending on how you define human life. The Bible, the first part of the Bible was written about 1,100 years before the birth of Christ. Every ancient people had a story of how the world came into being. Every single one. Adam and Eve is in our Bible because we have incorporated ourselves into the Jewish story. But that's all it is. It's a story. It's an attempt on the part of Jewish people to explain a lot of things that they didn't understand. The Adam and Eve story explains how the world came into being, how there happens to be two different sexes, a man and a woman, how it is that the man has to earn his living by the sweat of his brow, how it is that the woman has to endure pain in childbirth, how it is that snakes have to slink along their bellies in this world, and why it is that all human beings feel separated. That story is designed to speak to all of those human questions. But the same questions are raised by human beings everywhere, and religious stories in ancient people everywhere tried to answer those same issues. That is not history. That is mythological attempt to understand reality.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think about the way we were socialized to, in the beginning of our lives, that we should learn to read, to write, to have an education, buy a house, get cars, all the material things. Yet in the end we are told to seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all the other things will be added unto us. And we go through life going through a lot of struggle, trying to achieve these things, and we wait until we are about to die. We go to church with a big Bible. We have one foot on a banana skin and the other one over the grave.
When you get toward the end of your life, you have to cram for final exams. That's why you do that. Your question's a good one. Human beings always will try to do survival. Survival means they've got to have a safe place to live, they've got to have enough food to eat, they've got to be able to lie down in safety, they've got to be able to earn enough money to keep body and soul together. So that to be human immediately gets you into the survival mentality. Now the issue comes when you have enough to survive, and then you try to add more meaning to your life. I'd like to tell you, I know a lot of very rich people who are miserably unhappy. I know people who've got everything they could possibly want and still commit suicide. Material things don't finally fill the emptiness of the human heart. But a lot of people think they will. If I only had this, I would be happy. I do think there is a time when we're going to have to be responsible for one another. I don't believe the world will survive with half of it dieting and the other half of it starving. I think there's got to be a way, somehow, that we provide at least basic subsistence for every human being in the world and an opportunity for them to move from basic subsistence into a better kind of life. Now, that's not easy. It's not easy, and it's impossible, I would say, if the world's population keeps doubling every 40 years. There aren't enough resources to support the doubling of the human population. And one of the ways we might commit genocide is that we could keep breeding, and we get to the place where There are 6 billion people in the world today, and 40 years from now there are going to be 12 billion people today, and 40 years further there are going to be 24 billion people. And we have the same number of resources, and so you're going to have warfare where the strong the resources and starve the poor and the weak, and it's going to be a dreadful world. And none of us are going to be happy in that kind of world. So we've got to do two things. I think we've got to learn how to limit population with effective family planning, and we've got to learn how to find a way to share the wealth of this world so that nobody is starving while others are dieting. Now, that's not going to be an easy assignment, and it will have to be fought out in the political arena, but I think that's where we've got to go. And I hope that the Christian faith can keep people having a sense of the right priorities. The right priority is not the accumulation of wealth. The right priority is the ability to live with meaning inside this world and to have the hope. On the sixth day in the divine image is the last part of the Old Testament to be written. It comes out of a writer that we call the priestly writer. He's an exiled figure. He's in the 5th century. And that was a little more advanced. What they did when they put the Bible together, and the Old Testament, first 5 books of the Bible, and I have a chart on that over there, the first 5 books of the Bible called the Torah, the books of Moses, the law, come from 4 different strands of material. The oldest one is called the Yahwist material because it calls God Yahweh. And it comes out of the Jerusalem tradition. The second one is called the Elohist tradition because it calls God Elohim. And it comes out of the Northern Kingdom's mentality. And the third one is called the Deuteronomic version. And Deuteronomic is the book of Deuteronomy plus an editing of the other books that were bound together after the fall of the Northern Kingdom. And Deuteronomy simply means the second giving of the law. Deutero is the Greek word for law, for second, and nomos is the Greek word for law. So Deuteronomos, Deuteronomy means the second giving of the law. So they put the Old Testament first 5 books together in a new way in the 7th century, combining the Yahwist version, the Elohist version, and the Deuteronomic version. And then the Jewish people went off into captivity in exile. And a group of people called the priestly writers took the whole text, which now had 3 strands, and they re-edited the whole thing. And they put in the 7-day creation story, and they edited the story about manna in the wilderness, so that it didn't fall on every day. It only fell 6 days of the week so they could keep the Sabbath holy. And they edited the story of Noah and the ark so that Noah didn't just take 2 of every kind of animal, because Noah had to do the sacrifices while he was on the ark. He was there for 150 days. So they put 7 pairs of the animals that were going to be used for sacrifice so that the species wouldn't get extinct. They put the story together. And it was that priestly writer who wrote the Genesis 1 account. Now, they stand there in tension. But unfortunately, when Paul quoted the origin of woman, he always quoted from this ancient one that saw women only as the second-class citizen, the put down. And so that's how we are able, you see, also to raise from within the Christian faith people who have countered our prejudices. Please remember that all of the civil rights leaders in the United States were the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., the Reverend Ralph Abernathy, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and they were quoting the Bible against the way the Bible had been interpreted to support segregation. And when the women's movement arose, they also went back into the Bible and they began to find what I call the minority voices of Scripture. And they raised these up to overcome the hostility toward women that had become dominant in the Christian church. In the gay and lesbian movement today, they go back into the Bible and they find minority chapters. They even find places where they think there are gay or lesbian relationships being talked about. And they use the Bible to strike against the oppression that gay and lesbian people have experienced by the Christian church. And what I am doing when I begin to talk about how we are not born in sin is to find another way to open the Bible to a different possibility and let minority voices challenge the majority interpretation. And that happens over and over again, and I think that's the way the church grows. What we do is to have these minority voices of the past come out in the present in a new set of circumstances, and they become the majority voice of the future. but they're always there in the seeds. Thank you for your question. It was a good one.
Sorry, Bishop, with respect. The second part. Genesis 1, you say is one tradition.
Yeah.
Genesis 2 is a separate tradition according to you. I don't accept that, but according to you.
Yeah.
You say both sense of equality can be found in the document 1 according to you, and in the document 2 according to you. How do you deal with the Hebrew term for help and spiritual? Equal on even term. How do you deal with that?
Well, you see, you're asking me a question that I wrote a whole book to try to answer. It's called Rescuing the Bible from Fundamentalism. Yeah. But, I can't in the question period go into the total argument of that book. I simply don't invest Scripture with the authoritative Word of God concept. I think Scripture comes out of the people, and they don't always understand what they're writing. So that's the way I would deal with that. Yes, ma'am.
Greetings, everyone. I would like to know, with God of the universe and all the universal God, how do you analyze love, hate, and Jesus?
Love, hate, and what?
And Jesus.
Thank you. That's a good question. Take me about 2 hours to answer it. Let me try to be brief about that. The last book that I wrote was called A New Christianity for a New World. Just came out 4 days after the September the 11th attack. And in that book, I try to analyze the sources of evil. I don't think they have anything to do with a prehistoric fall into sin. I think they have to do with the fact that we have not evolved through our history into full humanity yet. And so out of our insecurity and needs, we do dreadful evils to one another. The counterpart of that is, how do you deal with that? If that's the way you understand evil, how do you deal with evil? You don't deal with it by condemning it. You deal with it by empowering people to step beyond the need to hurt one another. And in that book, I try to retell the Jesus story in terms of that. And I'm going to do this in Miami tomorrow in more detail. I'll try not to do it in great detail now because it's time for the coffee break. But what you need to do is to recognize that the Jesus story, when it's told, is told against a particular understanding of human life that was Jewish. And what they did was to tell the Jesus story in terms of the sacrificial act that took place on the Day of the Atonement in the Jews, the day they called Yom Kippur, where they took a perfect lamb and they slaughtered the lamb and they sprinkled the blood of the lamb on the people. And their understanding was that the lamb, because the lamb was physically perfect, and because the lamb cannot choose to do evil, the lamb was therefore a perfect offering. And they could offer this perfect offering to God, and God would accept the perfect offering offered by imperfect people. And then they would take the blood of this perfect lamb and sprinkle it on the people, and they felt that that blood cleansed them from their sins. And what these early Jewish people did in the light of their experience with Jesus was to interpret the death of Jesus in terms of the death of the Lamb of Yom Kippur. And that's why we call Jesus the Lamb of God. That's why we say he bears the sins of the people away. That comes right out of the liturgy of the Jewish synagogue, Yom Kippur. Now, that was done against the background of understanding human life as having been created good and then falling into sin. What I'm suggesting in a post-Darwinian world is that there never was a time when there was a perfect creation from which we fell, that we emerged out of evolution, and we simply haven't emerged far enough. And what we've got to have in Jesus is not the rescuer of the fallen, but what we've got to have is the empowering sense of the life and love of God that will enable us to continue our journey into a full humanity. And I try to tell the story of Jesus in maybe 3 chapters in that book against that sort of background. But that's as far as I can go. This will be our last question. I'll try to be brief. If you be brief, I'll be brief.
Yes, hello. During your sermon, you have used the word love 22 times.
Good.
And you have used the word respect only 3 times. How important is respect to Christianity? Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you're sitting back there keeping records of what words I use. I don't know that I think those words are different. I don't know how you can love and not respect at the same time. I think they are part and parcel of the same thing. The words that I tend to use to describe God and the Jesus experience, those words are, God is the source of life, so the more fully I live, the more I can reveal God. God is the source of love, so the more wastefully I love, the more I can reveal God. God is the ground of being, so the more I have the courage to be all that I am, I make God visible. And I'm a Christian because when I look at Jesus, I see a life so fully lived that I think the life of God is manifested in him. And I see a love that is so wastefully given. He gives his life away over and over again, not just on the cross, but over and over again. And so I believe I see the very source of love in him. And he seems to have the courage to be who he is under every set of circumstances. You know, they try to make him their king at Palm Sunday with cheers, and most people have their heads turned by what I call the sweet narcotic of human praise. But Jesus keeps right on going because he is not turned. He doesn't need praise. He is who he is. And then in the time of his crucifixion, when most people die, especially unjustly, when their life is being taken away, they try anything to survive. They beg, they scream, they cry, they whine, they pray, they cuss, they fight. But the portrait you have of Jesus is that he was so full and so complete that he's able to give his life away even as his life is being taken away from him. I see that as a picture of what God is all about. So I have no hesitancy joining St. Paul and saying, when I look at this portrait of Jesus, that's where I see the Holy God.
You are God in your deepest identity.
Religious wars continue to allow so much human suffering within the rest of the third world.
Good question. I don't know how I can explain it. It simply is. It is through a lot of accidents of history, and it is through some interesting conditions over which Europeans had no control whatsoever, in that they had a climate that didn't drain all of their energy, and so they were able to turn some of that energy into power-making enterprises, and they happened to be able to get some gunpowder from China. You know, China had a civilization long before Western Europe. Western Europe was still swinging by their tails in the trees when China had a very big civilization. But the world has turned, and Western civilization, which happened by, again, an accident of history, to be informed by Christianity.
IREFM, thought-provoking, always smoking.
Thank you.
Lyrics like a bazooka. You are listening to Muta Baruka. Yes, we're there with you. I hope you're still there with me. I hope you have been listening. That was a talk given Saturday gone at the Meridian Hotel by John Spong. Very interesting, informative. For those of you who just joined us, we're sorry, but you missed a sweet talk. Yes, and we're going to play part 2 next week. Yes, I want to bring back a thing to that we did before. Don't know much about the Bible. We want to bring that forward in the December month. But next week, the man going to talk about the virgin birth. Yes, don't give credence to it. As he asked him about the virgin birth and say that is one of the most sexy story he has ever read. And I give credence to that because I have said for a long time, say, I don't see how a book can show you that his woman brings sin into the world. And then 4,000 years after, according to how them put it, or 3,000 years after, them tell you now, say, a woman going to bring the savior of mankind in the world, but don't have no sex. The woman can let them go even further and say, she was immaculately conceived. That means if your mother never have sex to bring she neither. So what is that saying about women? Because we know, say, all my mother, she have enough sex. You know, see it, to bring me. So we don't know how she will fit into the purity and the divinity of what them talk about in heaven. And we know, say, one have a perfect to be divine. And we know, say, my mother is a divine being. We know that. And I have to ask somebody that. I have to bring a man in the world like me, she must have been divine. You understand? So, we don't get credence to those stories. And it's a long time we are telling people them these things. And we are saying white people have to come to Jamaica to tell them it, to make them believe it. And enough people go away with a different perspective too. You understand? The question here Chisholm asks about the equality story. What if people don't even know and don't even read into the two creation story that is in the Bible? What if people might be wondering, what the man talk about? When the man talk about two creation stories? Well, if you're the one who read the Bible, you will see that there is two creation stories. And I did grow up believing says Moses write Genesis, but it's lie. Lie. Nobody does. Moses don't write nothing in the Bible. Moses don't write nothing. As a matter of fact, Genesis is written by more than one person. And we can prove that to you by the stories that is written there. And the man mention that the two creation story, because in one creation story it tell you about let us make man in our own image. Male and female created ye them. That is in Genesis upon the 6th day. When they make man and let him say rest upon the 6th day, because he see that everything that he make was good. And then in Genesis 2, he got to show you a different creation story now. That there was no man to till the soil in unheard, and God fashioned a man out of mud. Not out of him own image now, out of mud. He create this man. And at a second thought, he realized that the man was lonely. If God don't know, say a man lonely. I don't know what kind of God that, but then no, how can a man be lonely for something that he don't know about? You understand? But according to the story, the second story, that the man was lonely. And instead of God create something will look like him, God started create animals until he must name the animal them. What if people don't read into these stories because them really listen to what the preacher say and them don't read for themselves? Because if you read for yourself, you'd realize that the animal is before woman. Because the animals them was created because of a need for Adam to have companionship. And when God created these animals, the man was still lonely. And then that is when now he put the man to sleep and take out the ribs out of the man and make a woman and call her woman. You know, see it? And then now the argument go on where this woman go talk to the snake, and the snake make she go eat of the fruit and go get her husband some, and then they realize them naked. It doesn't matter what the Bible go as far as they say them was hiding in the garden, and God was walking in the cool of the garden and asked them, "Who told you that you was naked?" And Adam, being the man with him, turned to the woman and said, "Why you want that? She give me to the Rasta." So I want to just know how these stories go and know say it's mythology, it's folk tales. It have nothing to do with no history. Continue FM.
Mr. Mirage Productions in association with Junior Cat, Marlon.
Jungle Fest Promotion presents Drum of the Jungle celebrating Sister Aita's Earth Day. Yes. Why you love Sister Aita? Yes, long time ago, see her. I know a strong sister that out there in the west there in Montego Bay, St. James. Yes, she's celebrating her Earth Day. Right over there in the Valley of Decision, Belmont, St. James. This is Friday the 7th of December. Starting 12 noon until. Enough excitement, lot of enjoyment. Yes. So I want the people them to know that the drums of the jungle celebrating Sister Aita's Earth Day. She will have people like Prince Tiba and the Sons of Thunder coming up from St. Thomas. Rocktop Chanters and Mackay Conscious will be there. Major Live. Yes. Sam Stafara, Hem Crew, Lightning Yard, Roots House and many more. So I want you to know that venue, Valley of Decision, Belmont, St. James. Friday the 7th of December starting from 12 noon. We want to remind the people them that right down there in Tivoli Garden, Tivoli Playfield comes alive Sunday the 9th December. This is an annual thing that is put on down there, and guess what? It's free. Yes, Bounty Killer, Elephant Man, Beanie Man, Morgan Heritage, Monster Shock, Mr. Vegas, and all those you think that you want to say will be there. This is the Cutting Edge and IRFM coming through. Yes, my brethren.
Yeah.
How you doing?
There, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Why, after when we hear it now, I'm not more convinced now, say, the man them write the Bible was a set up homosexual. You know? King James, as we know, was a second generation homosexual.
Yeah, them kill him father and I bet the next man too.
Yeah. So that makes him a second generation homosexual. Yeah, and basically, well, I wouldn't want to say that is what the Bible is about, but it reveals the mentality of the man them.
At that time.
Yeah.
Yes. And I talk about that too. When a man says the word of God, you have to watch what I say, because all those atrocities where I and I even read out sometimes, what go on in the Bible. If a man really say it's a divine consciousness that is perpetuating all of those evil upon people, something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Because how can a man tell you, say, boy, right now, a flood or an earthquake will kill 1 million people in China and Bangladesh? If God do it.
Yeah.
Or a flood will come and wash the Cuba over there, so it's because them now worship God while the flood comes in them.
It's sweet.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it got it Cuba.
Yeah, and here where we are now.
We so good and holy,
yeah,
and we are pray.
Yeah, that's why it flood no liquid. But Cuba now who now worship God.
Never did a pray.
Yeah, you know the way there?
You know?
The irony of the story, you know, the stupidity and the arrogance of these Christian-minded people out here to come and say, no, the reason why the flood, the hurricane passed over Jamaica is because they go to church, go pray.
Yeah.
You understand? That's
when is a scientific thing. This morning, may I have the conversation there in my house, you know, say, these cavemen who never understand science, telling lie upon God.
Of course.
Right?
Of course. And people feel that God I fight against God, I fight against God.
No.
The concept that these people perpetuate per way.
Yeah.
But you know what, I just go to say to you a while ago about the same flood thing. I would prefer to live in a country where a flood kills 12 people per year than a next country where 1,000 people dead by gun crime.
Precisely.
You know see? Because we cannot prevent a hurricane, but we can prevent gun crimes in Jamaica, and that none of them politicians is not doing it.
Precisely.
So we are going pious and pump up, like say boy right now, we so holy because we have more church than anywhere else in the world.
Yes.
And flood no liquid.
Yes.
But look on the criminality, the corruption of the governments and the opposition. Look on all the murder and
because
rape.
bad as things be.
Yes.
Me not hear them a kill 1,000 people over Cuba. Me don't even know if them a do that to over 80.
Not even in Israel.
Right.
Look here, Israel people don't dead per year in Palestine, and them fighting a war.
Yeah.
You understand? Them fighting a war over there, and 1,000 people don't dead per year, and we not fighting a war over here, and we killing off each other.
Yeah.
You know
but when the hurricane come now, we so holy.
Yes.
That's it, miss we.
And go kill and go wipe out some other place. Yes.
I follow you.
Yes. And then now Montserrat, then the volcano erupt and watch when the whole 10,000 people have evacuated.
Yeah.
You hear say, why right now through the people now will praise God.
Yeah.
You know,
when these are scientific things.
Scientific thing that is happening naturally.
Yeah.
Have nothing to do with no supernatural power.
Right.
You know, see, it's superstition that gives over to supernatural things.
Like a underwater volcano down a Grenada there. We're out to Europe now.
Yes.
We're going here, say, why?
Yes.
Them Grenada and they're so wicked and chew them in this and that with bishop and her and her.
I know something now. I'll tell you how the Christian mindset. You see, if a hurricane come tomorrow and mash down Jamaica, you know what I'm saying? It's true the people them wicked.
Yeah.
And so much gun crime are going on in Jamaica, why it happen.
Yeah.
You know see, but it's when it pass over, they say, boy, I think the other man wicked. You understand? Well, it's a contradiction, the right word sells, you know what I mean?
Well, man, I tell you, you say something earlier, you know, where God is a white man come and I tell them a thing and now
I
still.
tell you, man.
I tell you because if when we assess so,
Yes.
them say where we smoke and where we not smoke.
Man, if you put it in the Taliban government, man, you get burned at the stake, and you put it in the Inquisition ages, man.
Yeah, because alright, look on when the part where I tell you about the plague. The man them say, true we are by infidel. Right?
Yes.
And chase out the Jews, them and everybody.
And the Moors, yes. Yes. Because the infidels, them used to call the Moors, them infidels. And now, you know the weirdest thing now the Muslims are called Christians infidels.
Yeah.
So you say that thing.
I want to chase them out of Arabia.
Yeah. In olden times, the Romans used to call the Christians pagans.
Yeah.
You know, see, because them was giving credence to a Christian God.
Yeah.
And when Constantine come and declare Christianity as a legitimate Roman religion and a state religion, everybody who did not give credence to Christianity under Constantine was seen as pagans.
Yeah.
So you see how the shift come.
Yeah.
You know, see it?
The man, when the Moors go past Spain there, the man them say when them say, the man them are beard.
Twice
a day. Witchcraft.
Some witchcraft, the man them beard twice a day. Can you hear what them used to do now? Them used to have spies, you know.
Yeah.
Like you live next door and more now, and you see him beard that the man longer work, and you see him come home back and then beard again.
Yeah.
And you look over your way and say, wait, how the man not beard this man? You know, him come in my beard again. I have to tell the authorities.
Yeah, and right against the edge of the Mediterranean there, from even in a them time there, was a very hot place.
Yes, yes. But the people here, you say these things, he say that joke thing, you know. Because people don't know of these things, you know. People hear me come by the continent and talk these things now. People don't, you heard the man just say a while ago. China did have a civilization when Europeans was swinging upon them tail in Europe.
Yeah.
You see if me ever say that?
Oh Lord.
You see if me ever say that? The white people that swing upon them tail in Europe when Africa was a civilized country. You don't hear some bloodbath guys that come to the
barefoot.
Yeah.
Rasta man
the radio and talk about white people and swing upon them tail.
Last thing, you see the map where you say no, them turn the thing upside down.
Yes.
May I give you a business idea? We want to see some of the map them we print the right way, you know.
But all you have to do, you know, is turn, it's if you have a map of Africa by you, you turn it the other way.
Yeah, but the thing says somebody should have get into the business of printing it, printing the whole globe thing the right way, make we see it.
Well, all you have to do is turn the map round the other way.
Well,
turn the map round the other way and you will have the river flowing down, and you will have America down, you know, and all these things. Canada will down.
Australia up.
Yeah, that is where it's supposed to really be. That is how it's supposed to really be, you know.
So it's not down under, it's up, is up
above.
over.
Up above.
Yes.
I remember about 2 years ago, you know, I'm a fact, you know, I see that weekend, I see that daughter that weekend, you know, daughter go university, you know. We are reading on my shop, you know, and she say, heaven is up. So I say, up where? And she point up. So I say, so what do the people them in China? Where is under we? Which part them could have point up? Up is where?
Yeah.
Because the earth is revolving.
Yeah.
You know, see, so when you say heaven is up, what you really mean? She say heaven is up in the sky.
Well, that song did say which way is up.
May I tell you?
Yeah.
You know, north is not only because you think say you're down below in south. You know?
Yeah.
East is west. And west is east, only because you think they're on the other side of east.
Yeah, because if you go right round, you know, come back round.
Oh, what goes around, come around.
Yeah.
You know, see it. So it's that thing and...
Columbus theory never so wrong. Him did a try reach east by going west, but he never knows the big whole America in the way.
Yes, he never knows that so much thing was in the way.
Yeah.
You know, see it. Yeah, man, give thanks.
Yeah, man, protection.
Yes. You know, until we talk these things, man, feel say we just talk out a weird and thing, but we're talking out a weird and we are talking about all even through questioning authority, because enough people don't want to use them God-given intelligence based upon how them view this God-given thing. You know, because man, I tell you, say God give him intelligence. I don't know where God see and put it in there, but within the level of consciousness. If a man have him intelligence, and a man bring something to him, and him see that thing as truth, and him do examine that truth, and just gulp it down so. Him going go just be led, and I know black people in Jamaica love to be led, them don't like to reason out things. And you see that every Sunday you see it, I go on. The majority of people in Jamaica right now go to church at least one Sunday in every month, giving credence to a Christian God. And when I look at Jamaica today, and I see the poverty and the death and the destruction, the suicide and the abuse of women and children, I now blame God, because I don't even know who is this God or what is this God that them talk about. But I know, say, these people who worship this God is in a serious problem, because they are the ones that perpetuate these gun crimes, these abuse of women and children, and all these suicide and all these robbery and corruption that is taking place in small Jamaica. I don't know if I should have really look and say, what happened to the African concept and the African original way that them don't teach we? That when you find it now you hear says voodoo and hobby and this and that and all these things. Because anything where African know them say is devil worship. You know, see, devil worship, but them worship a God who kill off, are said to have killed off every firstborn Egyptian youth. What did those little Egyptian children do? See, God will spend them wrath against it because what? Because he want to take some children or take for the people them who him say him love out of this country. A compassionate God and an all-powerful God don't need to kill thousands of people to free the people who him love, because he is all-powerful. What is proof? What him trying to prove? What is this God trying to prove? Who him proving it to? Who improving it too? So I am putting it forward and again and again and again, that this concept of God, this anthropomorphic idea of God, was given to us by some insecure men. It has nothing to do with no supernatural element of creation or supernatural being that is pumping the consciousness of these men. These men is being driven by power and by greed and by the need to control and manipulate through fear the minds of anyone who come in contact with that concept and that idea. It has nothing to do with no being outside of these people, because everything wrong or right is coming from the mind and the behavior of men. Yes, everything that is wrong or right, because there's no idea of wrong and right outside of the mind of man. There's no idea of wrong and right outside of the mind of men. Wrong and right don't exist nowhere else but in the minds of men. So when a man tell you, say, boy, I know the devil out there so, and God out there so, it's because him don't want to take responsibility for the evil and the cruel acts of oppression and degradation that him perpetuates every day against him fellow man. So I have put it forward again, and we have been putting it forward for years, that God is an illusion in the minds of man, and the devil is an illusion in the minds of men. All of these was created by the minds of men, and the only way you can manipulate yourself out of these things is to get rid of all of these little religious mentality that is created by these gods, that was created by these men who is insecure in them thinking and in them way of life. I come here so now as an African person in the 21st century, And you ever bring a book to me with some guys who did a run up and down in the wilderness, don't know where they are, these are them going, who never understand life as how I know it today. And you going to tell me now, say, I have to go now, book by book, page by page, and live according to this book? Then what happened to the experience of my experience in this time? You mean say don't count for nothing? I look at the Bible and I see good things and I see bad things. But why you come push it pan I until I say, why if I don't live this way, it's so, I'm going to dead. They want to all these millions of people who don't know about nothing about no Bible. And they will read nothing about no Bible, who have them own idea and perceptions of life. That don't count for nothing. You mean say, the God of creation, who made everything on earth, only come for a select set of people, named the Israelites, who did live thousands of years ago, if they did ever live. When I credence to these things, with people right now, and we must create that spiritual awakeness that will be able to free us from all of these oppressive states, white supremacy, capitalism, communism, socialism, democracy, all of these things. We need to free ourselves from it. Free ourselves. Because none of these leaders have the interest of the mind, the people them at heart. And anytime them teach you, you get stupid. Anytime them teach you, you start to react and behave in a way that is inhuman and inhumane. When you look on all that we're going in the world today, when you look on all, I hear people tell you, say, boy, right now, you know, the thing we're going September the 11th, you know, the man crashing out, the man crash building and kill all a set of people, the man tell us, boy, right now, Ghana church, the man them say, never in the history of America, church was so filled in the week of that crash. It's when the crash happened now, the people them turn to God now. But the crash don't happen already. So where was God when the plane was crashing in the building? So them things say God going to come now because them praying. Praying to who? Who them praying to? To what are they praying to? People go to church every Sunday to them praying. Them praying for win lottery. Them praying that them pick the pass exam. Them praying that them win football. Them praying that somebody, them man come back to them. Them praying that them woman come back to them. Them praying that them find back the little watch for them last yesterday. People praying for some little obscure and unnecessary things. And when we look at what is going on, them having prayer breakfast for the criminality that's going on in the western part of the island, them pray for all sorts of things. Everybody's praying. And the more them pray, is the wickeder the heart become, and hardened the heart become. The more them pray, the more corrupt their minds become. And if the leaders continue, the people will have to lead. Because if the people lead, the leaders must follow. That is what one great man said. And for those of them who is controlling the minds of the people with them Christian beliefs and Christian thinking, and say them find God. You know, we read a story where a great man say, and the great man say, follow the person who is searching for God, but run away from the person that say them find him. That's not the exact word, but it's so it go. The gist of the matter is there. Him say, follow the person who is searching for God, but run away from the person who tell you that them find him. I was reading that woman up at the university one night, and she said, yeah, what is he? And I said, so why you can't say it? And why you can't stop give genders to God? The concept that you hold to. Because God is a concept. God has nothing to do with nothing more than a concept. It's a thing in your mind. So why you have to say he or she? Why you can't say it? She said, no, you can't call my God it. He is real. I say, ratted. Whoa, you know. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult to come to this understanding if you get stuck in a little belief system, you know. It gets very difficult. As a matter of fact, it almost come blasphemous. It almost come, you know, crazy for even come on all national radio, come say to the people of Jamaica, say, watch a man. You see, on the concept of God, not going to help Uno, it's not going to help the people in Jamaica, and it's not going to help the world. Because it's the same concept of God that caused the world to in the problem where it's in right now. We are declared that. So if you continue with the same concept, or you expect something new to happen to you, because every day you look, you see things get worse. Every day. And people feel say it's getting worse because they're not praising Jesus. But most people do this thing. Most people do it. There's no shortage of praise in Jamaica. Every little open land you see a tent there. And little more you see a big church building there. I reason with a person this weekend, yeah. And when I reason, I said, Baz, him said, boy, Musa, you're a dangerous fellow, you know. You're a dangerous person on the radio. I said, why you say that? Him say, you're inciting the people there, man. You're inciting me. I said, what are you inciting the people there about? Look here now. Why don't you keep telling the people them that you don't want to build the church and collect their money, and you don't have them be a part of the ownership of the church? Because it's one man and his family own most of these church where you say I go up now. And if a man wants to go, I hear a virgin say, when him leave university, him going to build a church. And it's not theology him doing at the university. Him into something other than theology. But him feel say when him going to build a church. Him going to build a church because him feel say money can make out of it. And that is the way to go now because it's tax free. It's tax free. Why is it that Jamaica has so much deficit for money and the church collects so much money in Jamaica and them not paying no tax? Why is it that the church is tax free? This is a whole colonial European mentality that has perpetuated itself, but tell you say, because the church is a church of the Lord, it was tax free. This is the 21st century. The church is not giving no money to the Lord, because there's a story about the preacher who collect the people their money and them say, look here, I throw the money up in the air. Anything where God take is for him one, and anything where drop a gun on my own. Yeah, that's right. So it's a thing. The church should be paying tax, because the amount of money that passes through the church every Sunday could help the deficit in our cash flow in Jamaica to build roads and schools and hospitals for black people to go by instead of waiting for God to put them in heaven and waiting for them to die to take away their other inheritance from them. The church needs to pay tax in Jamaica. What kind of mentality is that continue in the 21st century to say the church must pay tax? Give me one good reason why the church must not pay tax. Why is the church exempt from tax in Jamaica when we don't see the church money? We're not talking about food for the poor and all this, because most of this food for the poor place is not church give them the money. It's little organization that is outside of these churches. A lot of these poor relief places is funded by other people other than the church. But if you should look at Jamaica, as Jamaica is, them say Jamaica has the most church per square mile per capita than any other country for its size. And if you should just examine how much people in 1 square mile, how much church you see, and every Sunday them church they cock, and every Sunday them collect money, and if poor people even drop $100, because poor people now go to church again with no 10 cents for drop no plate, them now no plate collection, a box and bucket them and they walk around with nowadays. You know, see the plate. First time I used to go to Baptist church with my granny, they walk around with a plate. And everybody can see everybody a show. Then sometimes you see them have a little bag, like a bingo bag, and them just drop your money nobody can see. But me can bet you say, when people go to church in these times, which me not really go, but a man can call me and tell me, that a man now put less than $50 in the plate. You understand? And then church they cock. So you can just imagine in 1 square mile of church how much money collect. Most of the time about in a Kingston, just in a Kingston, the amount of church in a Kingston is full up per Sunday. You can just imagine how much money collect this for Rasta. The money we collect in a church for every Sunday in a Jamaica. Suppose you can alleviate enough things we are going on in Jamaica right now socially for the people them. But we don't see it spilling off in the wider community most of the time. All we see is big and brighter church places going up and more recreational facilities for people who don't want to go to parties, but they have their own party, who don't want to go to a Stone Love session or go to a Sting, but them have them stage show where go and see them like Sting, don't go think them I say is Jesus, and the man them over there so I say Jah. But no difference so there, because of the same kind of music, the same hold up your hand if you love Jesus, wave your hand in the air if you love Jesus, and the same DJ are going and things. So no difference so there. But them is exempt. Them is tax exempt people. I vex about those things. I vex about that Rasta. Where I see my country can be really, really money earned every Sunday. The biggest part of that money earning aspect of Jamaica is lost in what you call religion. Because our leaders give credence to religion. You know, in Arab countries where the Muslims are, them don't take interest for money in the bank or anywhere. It is against them religion to take interest for money. In Jamaica, the interest rate is sometimes more than what you pay for the something. You understand? And this is a Christian society. And when somebody you be attacked, you will say, Buta, what you have against Christian? I have tough things against these people in Jamaica that lead the people astray. Jeremiah 23 said, woe to the shepherd that lead the people astray. That's a true thing. Them leading the people astray. With them mythology, with them lies, and with them deceit and corruption. It go right across the board. And I want to warn my Rasta brethren them in a Rasta. Because I say a whole heap of Rasta look like them want to come turn around Rasta in some little Christian thinking. And I still have the same ideas. Let me do a shift. Jesus to Haile Selassie. And shift for a little crazy talking to Rastafari. We must stop it. We must stop it. You know, see? Because if a man attack for Rasta is not a religion, it's a way of life. Him can't have no religious processions and then I come tell you about see him like a Rasta thinking more right than the Christian thing. When you really check it, all him a do is switch, whatever I say, is switch one thing for the next, but it's the same thing in a disguise. Enough Rasta will say I do that, and they must stop it. You know, see it, you must stop it, because your children, they want to come and fight against Rasta, same like how you are fight against the Christian there. Yes, cutting edge. Yes.
My Lord.
Ah, blessed. How you do, Jesse?
Well, I'm over.
You're there, right, did you hear the program?
Yeah, man, the program you hear about our church.
Yeah, we just have a talk by a brethren, a bishop, where I leak down the Adam and Eve story and the virgin birth, and I show man say, boy, right now, a man should just get real, you know? So simple, just get real, you know? So you know, man?
Yeah, man, today I follow the vibration and I hear Garnet as usual.
Yeah.
I know the Garnet have put on a patent on his voice, so it's unique. I hear a bunch on fire everlasting. Yeah, give thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, this one now. I reach up to 99 and and Garnet I talk about Wall Street, them time the Wall Street in the Dow Industrial I climbed to 11,500, I got to 12,000 points. And a virgin call, I said, oh, just then I'm respecting about me now, follow up on that one, I call Wall Street, make me rich. I'm not telling him to pull in money and run. And he said, no, sir. But from 2,000 to now, at 3,000 points, Wall Street lose. So all I'm on the invest get a beaten. All Jamaica.
No, all of them don't get a beaten.
So I know all the virgin now, on vibes still.
No, I say all of them don't get a beaten. Because Wall Street seems to be going stronger now. Since September and everything.
The war, balance it now.
No, that means maybe a man create a war to make Wall Street get more powerful.
But that's exactly what I want, but that's what I'm saying now. Still, Wall Street is a casino. I want to tell all the bankers in Jamaica, because you know where the bankers in Jamaica do. Remember I say, the crisis we go through the other day now. I went past singing go by a bank of Miami and straight on Wall Street to be the first Caribbean youth a straight on Wall Street, you know. And chaos happening, you know, Eagle Merchant, Tumblr, everything Tumblr and things that come take over. But the bankers then still invest on Wall Street, not knowing and realizing that it's that gangster run casino. And then by the one show them and them to know that. Because when they're ready to cash it, them cash it and beard. And then when they're ready to make it billion people, won't lose. By Wall Street lose 8 trillion, some money lose. By 2000 to now 8 trillion, them lose. And one out of pocket is going on. So, poor people, one night Bank of Jamaica, and poor people don't know them things there. So we have Minister of Intelligence, you them have to know. It's what I say, my lad. And remember, church. A church with the people, because remember they're not state and church, you know. A church and state.
Yeah, church and state. And that we know.
It's what I say, fire.
The people them don't want to see say their life is being controlled and manipulated by a force that them feel says outside there, but it's really inside of them, the force there. It has been imprinted and indelibly put there. That a one who feel say, you know, it's him that do the thing, when it's not really him, but him is controlled. You know, it's very difficult to tell a man him is controlled when him don't see nobody around him and control him, you know. But him don't know that psychology.
The people them still wait for Jesus to come. You feel that?
More than what do you mean if them still await? Them still await? May I tell you to the church, them cock a Sunday. How are you talking about? Them feel that you what the Christian faith do now. The Christian faith make you feel say the worst thing is, the worst socially and economically and politically, the worst thing is the nearer Jesus is. And that is a weird concept, you know. That most people who give credence to Christianity, anytime things get bad, it's that time you hear them feel say Jesus Christ is near. And anytime things get good, Jesus Christ look like it far because you're not supposed to rich. You know, see? So a man who rich now, a man tell you, why if you're rich, you're farther from God. But if you're poor, you're nearer to God. You know, it's them kind of concept there. We can't understand them concept there. You know, the people that are so far, they're not out to live in that. They don't have nothing, you know. And anytime some disaster take them, say God they're near. So them go to church more. But same time them are right now. To them say God they're far.
You know, there's a saying within the culture of Jamaica and the Caribbean, I say, if you think about diamond, you think about vanity and that's all fear or drop out or suffer. You never know that too.
Well, white people that think about it and them is controlling the whole world. The Jew them think about it and it's them controlling the whole world.
Well, between I and the whole black man Republican cut diamond and some black Indian in India, in Bombay. Other than that, it's just the white Jews control it, you know. So it's a thing now, you know, the black people live. I don't know nothing about them thing there. It's a thing. It's a terrible thing.
It's depressing, Rasta. It's depressing. Because I can't understand how a man in the worst poverty of poverties, right? And it's very much in the worst of poverties, Rasta. You see him run gone to church. You notice a whole heap of people who turn Christian. It's not love them love Jesus, you know. It's fear them situation, you know. So anytime some disasters take them in life, them change and gone to Jesus. You know see. But anytime everything alright with them, Jesus is forgotten. You know see. So it's only in times of trouble, according to the song, them call upon Jesus. But when everything alright with them, they don't talk nothing about no Jesus. So you see too, everybody in a sufferation now and this and that and murder rate and thing. No people go to church because them see so when them go to church, everything will go alright and get worse. It's worse.
Then I have asked the next question. They, you know, to say with the Arab so-called Arab force threaten Christianity, then you know to say the church people have it as prophecy to say they don't know a force of a rise up.
Well, that may show you how people think. You see now you see what them go now, them go look in at the Bible now, you know, to find a rationale in relation to freedom God about what is taking place. So when all the building crashing at the plane now, when the plane crashing at the building now and America gone over this to kill all the people them now, you have Christians who go in at the Bible and try to find a rational Bible thinking to justify or not justify what is taking place. Instead of seeing, say, America foreign policies is what is causing all of these things a whole heap of time. And America need to revise them foreign policy. Man start going to Bible and I say, see there, you know, so this must have, you know, Revelation 18, it said this about, you know. And Revelation 18 have nothing to do with no building or crashing or no building, Rasta. With no plane or crashing or building, you know. Revelation have nothing to do with it. Man must wake up to them reality there, because every race, every nation of people who read the Bible, anytime something affect them turn to the Bible to see how it relates to them. In every time, in every ages, from the Bible was given to us 2,000 years now, everything that happened to mankind in relationship to Christian thinking, people turn to the Bible to justify or not justify the action or the reaction that take place in the reality of the life. So the Bible is not no specific time period. The Bible, man use the Bible to transcend the time period where you live in. You know. But when you live in a period there, if something happen, you say, see that the Bible here. Let me know sit at the Bible, Rasta see there. It's like how some man look at the Bible and say, boy, I just last year the Almighty see at the Bible there. That means if you never have the Bible, they wouldn't know that, you know. They wouldn't even come to that conclusion. A man look at the Bible and say, see there, in a Leviticus to tell you say homosexuality wrong. He couldn't come to that conclusion. The Bible is looking for the natural order of things, you know. You know, see, you have to turn to the Bible. Yeah, man. They don't say the Bible tell you say homosexuality is this and that. They suppose Leviticus never say it. You only understand say that. Just by looking at nature, you don't have to even give credence to that. Why you have to turn to the Bible to know that? And then one to the part of the Bible where we oppress women, like the man I tell you about the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments, thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his oxen, nor is this and that. That means that you have put woman and oxen and all them things together. And lump up woman together. Woman not see these things. Woman not see this. Moses did learn things in Egypt. And when Moses give the people them, the Jews them, is where the Pharaohs them give him. And it's more than that the Pharaohs them give him to. So you have to go back to the root of where Moses go learn for him thing. To come learn about the essence and the quality of life that black people used to live before all of these Bible doctrine come and mess up and mash up the whole concept of the thing. You know,
so I will fix up the Bible now.
Eh?
I will press the Bible print now.
Oh, which one?
Oh.
The press? The oppressor. The oppressor.
You know, Oxford
the oppressor press.
You know the Oxford press in England?
Oxford.
Yeah, when I look at this thing in a Rastafari tradition now is Rasta will worship Bible and Rasta will I say, my Lord, you have to look for the Bible good in a car. The Bible have black people across Egypt. And Egypt have an highest existence of black people worldwide, and have I across Egypt, and a big up Moses, and a big up Yahweh, and a big up Jehovah. And man, I tell something that's full enough to know all them things.
Yeah, I was God of war in Israelite.
No. When I say you mean the East Coast.
Yeah.
The East Coast, man.
Yeah. It's a war God. You know, it's not the same God in Isaiah, it's not the same God in the New Testament. It's a different God. It's a different concept. You see, when Isaiah and Jeremiah and them man they come, them kind of balance the thing a little more. And in at the time now, when them say now Christianity evolved now from this thinking, them balance the thing even more. So we come now in the 21st century. We can't go follow point blank everything that happened 2,000 years ago and everything that happened 5,000 years ago. We have our own intelligence, we have our own information, we have our own thing that is going on now. So we need to evolve out of those things now and come to a reality of where we're there. It's just simple that. You don't need no big scientists and no big white boy to come here to come tell black people these things. Or black people just stiff-legged and fool. That every time white people talk, them agree. And every time black people talk, them say, well, I'll listen to where I say, Rasta. You know, see?
Yeah, I program. That program will come in my now. You look at the name of the moment. Can ride bicycle. First of months on a bicycle all over Kingston all over Ghetto. Yeah. I do and love my camera out and give tea and
talk to him.
And no one to do nothing.
Yeah. And if you got to come and get rotted, what you want? Call police. Rasta come and get one Sunday, call police for the rotted. Two white guys come with white shirt and black pants with a bicycle and a Bible like man. You call him at your house and put him by your veranda and give me your daughter too.
What?
I saw them go on. And say, oh, that nice white fellow. Come in. You know, see, white people now rob you, know, but a Rasta man who come at your gate one Sunday morning, is either beg him or beg you something, or is rob him come for rob you. You know, see, what you want now? You see, meanwhile you look on a Rasta man for rob you or your silver and gold, the white man can come in and rob you, your mind. You know, see, it's your mind him coming at your house come rob you, know. So when you take that two white boy in your house to sit down there and talk to you, You feel say your jewelry safe inside, but your mind gone. So you go and rob the Rastaman who come at your gate now and feel say why the Rastaman come there to come rob you your gold. When the white boy come in there and rob you your mind. So which one is more precious, your gold or your mind? You know what I'm saying?
I said, no, soon after I get to know and them boy right now get to know, so I can talk to the ghetto youth, them and I talk to our Cantibale and Riemann Jungle and all the youth them about Jamaica. All Trinidad took, you them all sit on neck, no feet forward. You them tell me not, they not hear me. He's the the black people them know there. Before Jacob them got Egypt, Isis Rael did there, Amen Ra did there, Fat Moses did there, Amen Moses did there. They just want black people to know them thing there. And that book in the Bible, black people to put it away. Enough trouble I make with them statements I give them, my Lord. Because I tell you to the Bible confused and the Bible set up to make black people look bad and black people look low. That Arab can't say yes, black people sit in a slavery. So I just want to touch on a point like this now, and I hear look about even Tiaga they know in a GLP now. I make all some statements and now say boy, Kengan can't read and enough to get them contract and rare. So more ask Tiaga say if a black youth rise up and I heard none of Jamaican because you never get university education, if it's not supposed to eligible or qualify to get them type of contract and them type of word there. Or them type of word for just go to certain high class people. That thing then I get you to come from Klein and run a Yarton bush there and go down a race course and come till bottom there now. And then time they will ride one little S90 bike, you know. To come straight up to come to them thing. And then again, if I believe of them Changa Matalan and me say work at on time. So what is this now with Agaza Syria now? Then you know, no black man up in them position there. Is that what Jamaica gone to now? And we must try, you know, we must try to ask you. It should typically now. They got to drop people, you know, they go against jungle now and TMP and Labour right now, to take it into a personal gangster war. Now Mr. Jamaica to broke up in a gangster war now. So you think that to Mr. Tiaga now, no. There's not enough grass in a Jamaica for Tiaga to see a call, you know. And the next thing you ever tell Shenko, so what Tiaga, no pay him no mind. Take him time and do him, because all Tiaga want to do is drug of violence. You take him off a team track. And they have to lift them down, because justice is justice. There must be two strong and they have to the eye now. And about no PMP, you know, the PMP, a certain PMP eat food and no PMP eat and enough labor rights to eat. And to add them to place even a power and labor rights a role, PMP to eat, and it's so called violence. So, people they know that those in the bias in it. It's when I come from, I never to this thing to Jamaica now. And I don't say, I'm not going to people the rights to the prominence, you know, and get nothing out of earth, you know, who not dead, you are in prison, you know. So just want everyone know that in Jamaica. Because the partiality around Jamaica now, you know. I never talk about Afghanistan and international vibration, and when it comes to Jamaica, we iron out them things there now. No gangster one have broke out in Jamaica, and no innocent people now are dead. And if I ask Mr. Tiaga a drop, I would draw them vibration, I would just want them know that it's not going to work, you know. So we talk to you them from both sides. For them to make up their mind and organize to go unite and go Africa to go trade stone, precious stone. Get me and tell Timali and Jungle and Warrior say, if you ever meditate to go unite around Africa, because you can't trade them things without army. You have to know them things there. If you ever unite, you know they are forced to reckon with in righteousness defending black people finance. You shouldn't have to move to Waruka.
Yeah, man, I listen.
No partiality. You shouldn't have to tell Mr. Tiaga that they want to win election to go fight politics, intelligent, intellectualist. You have to tell black people and go to it. Make people writing speech and say it properly. But I don't go in and gang war now, because now I'm working in Jamaica. Too much black people are dead in Jamaica in my life. 900 to 1,000 on an election day yet. You see where I come from?
Well, I tell you.
I was up on the podium, I was up on the stage, we have to make black people know. People in jungle to know, work and stronger to know, and untouchables to know, and show up to know. That's why we stop the nonsense and look towards Africa and unite. And we need army on it, you know. I know this is true such a moment argument in the motor. When the movement look white boy and ride up and up to the ghetto. Jamaica and bad man, afraid of white people. We can't say that. I'm not afraid to say that. No matter where them come from down there. They feel that they shoot black people in a second by the blink. They shot black people. But white people, come on now, can I science that?
That means I tell you, say, if Sunday morning, some of them people are sitting at them gate and see a Rasta man come at the gate. The first thing them guys do is call police and I drive for them gun or something. I just see the Rasta man come to come rob them and them jewelry. But if two white boys come at them gate Sunday morning, they would have more want the white boy them come sit down on them veranda and say, boy, the white man never rob them. But I want to know out of your gold and your diamond and your mind, which one is more important to you? Because the white boy gone with your mind, you feel to the Rasta man come for your jewelry. You know, you have to watch out.
White boy gone with his mind and gone with his diamond too. That's another diamond to Rasta man, Rob. And it's a necklace. So we're copper stone over with the crown. We call it we call it a motor. We call it a copper of gold, man. White, what they call it what?
Brass? Brass,
man. Might have been brass and piece of Rasta come to that white man don't take when diamond and come to mine. Yeah, man, I tell him my lord.
Give the book. I tell him what shut to buy and pray.
But you know why I put to worry about the Bible still no more?
No, me not worry. Wait a man, me not worry.
It's not no. It's not there. We don't want to worry still, but we don't know if I get run out still, but at the same time it's balance up, you know, because remember, you know, enough reason go on from the cutting edge, you know, where them think are story in the liberty of black people, past, present, and future, you know. So me know that I might have compiled it in a cassette, but not other you to compile it all type of way. And I said, boy, this did say and that did.
Hello?
No, that's my, you know, phone now, I said, me have a minute, so you don't know.
Okay.
But so I come from, not to compile it. And in the future, the youth have it to listen to. So let the youth know that I and I run and write a new Bible.
Of course.
So I come from.
True experience.
It's a man, true liberty and living.
Yeah, that true liberty and experience. We have to just know, comprehend what is taking place through our reality and just write our own thing. That is why it's so important that these musicians say the right thing. Because the musicians them say the right thing, it will go down in history as a biblical scriptures. You know, see?
But most of the musicians them are praise all something what them know about, man, or some Yahweh and something. But anyway, you say Prime Minister near the Saint, what happened?
Me no hear you?
I said, you say PJ near the Saint over Portmore, what happened?
No nearly, him faint, him drop down.
Have you?
Yeah, every time I go over there, him drop down. I'm not saying I'm exhausted. So them put him for rest. So we don't know he must stop rest and all. Well, man gone, stick him thing done. But I tell the people them say we need to wake up Rasta. I mean it's kinda difficult to tell you at 5 to 3 for wake up, but we don't talk about that kind of wake up there. We are talking about reality check. Reality check. I will say it so many times on this program and that it come like a battering board, you know, but we can't say it too much. Check your life. Check the collective. Check what's going on in the world today. Check what's going on in Jamaica. Check the philosophy. Check the religion. Check the politics of Jamaica. And tell me if you feel justified that what is happening is what you want to happen. Check it. Check the religion of the country and tell me if the people them who you say carrying out this religious practice and religious belief is nation builders, is role models, is people who is defining a certain quality of life that is necessary for your children to come live. Check the politics of the country and see if the politician them who you give power over your son and your daughter, that when certain times of the year come, or every 5 years, the slaughtering of your sons and daughters is necessary to keep these people in power. Check and see if this is the quality of life that is necessary for you and your children them to live in this society. And if your answer is yes, this is the quality of life, well, just make it continue. Just make it continue. But if you just have a doubt in your mind, say, why, this is not what we want, this is not what I want for Jamaica, this is not what I want for the people, this is not what I want for myself, then you are guilty of not waking up to a greater light in yourself. You are guilty of not questioning and analyzing and think for yourself. But, because some people give up them political idea, you know, but you see them religion now, them scared. And that is the problem with this thing named religion. Because while the society will make you go to church no matter how you look, when them not going to make you go to school no matter how you look, you have to fight for go to school with locks. You have to fight for go to school with afro. You have to fight for go to school with a different religious belief. Because I stand up this morning and I listen to a school. Them are called, ring the bell for school start. And I listen to the school and I hear them as preach. When them give the national anthem and them give the weight name there. And then them going at this religious sermon. And I am saying, wow, they suppose everybody there is not of that religion. How them come to grips with that? But you know where I hear the youth them I say? The youth them I say, that the teacher them I say, if them now come at devotion, them not to come in a class. So whether you're Muslim, whether you're Buddhist, whether you're Rasta or not, if you decide as a youth or as a parent that your child must not take part in Christian devotion, you're liable to get expelled. That is the thinking what we have in Jamaica, that is the society where we live in. You know, see, the society will tell you, say, boy, right now, you see, right now, this is a Christian society, and you have to do, you know, I'm going to fight against Taliban, or the Taliban. It's no different from the Taliban, because the Taliban say, boy, right now, you can't even go preach Christianity under the Taliban government. You can't even preach Christianity under the Taliban government. Them think they're liable to get you killed. But them draw themselves from these things. Take themselves out of these things and say, no, that couldn't happen in Jamaica. But it happened right now with nose. Maybe that as blatantly as killing you by shooting in your head. But killing you intellectually. Killing you in a more subtle way. Because them tell you, say, you have to get devotion. You go to a school, you must have devotion. And everybody who having devotion is giving credence to Christian thinking. Jesus Christ and the God of the Bible. Every one of them is doing this. That means, say, if you have no chance, if you decide, say, well, right now, you're not taking part in it, but you guys sit down in your classroom until devotion done. The principal went to come there and say, oh, you're not in devotion. And you say, ah, sorry, sir, but I don't give credence to the Christian God. Out you go. Out you go. You know them saying I'm not tolerance. How them saying I'm not tolerance? Because I play tape with man and I praise Jesus. I talk to people every day. You know, see it? People come amongst me, I work with people, people work with me, but don't even have nothing but Rasta in their mind. You know, see it? It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing we live in this society, Rasta. And things not getting better because we now root out the cancer. You know, see it? We are pretty it up, put paper upon it and show a little, you know, rub tiger balm over it or something. We are do. You know, we're not going at the root right and dig it out. The politics and the religion corrupt to the core. So when you can reach a pass now, when you can reason with a pass and a pass tell you say, well, I'm gonna build my church, yes. I'm gonna build a church, yeah man, I'm gonna build my church. You know, see it? Yeah. That's a feedback vision. Every young youth right now, we are third person or get ordained or what them call them. Them are look for go build a church. And so the youth tell me, say, boy, when them leave university, I'm gonna build a church, I'm gonna go preach. And I say, yes, boss, go and do it. That's for the money there. That's for the money there. Nobody can stop you. Earn money. I just so it go.
Blessed goodness and all that is of positive to you and the family. What you say?
We're there.
Nice. Give thanks to the head upliftment of the people, you know?
Yeah, you don't listen to the talk by the man?
Yes, man. What you should say?
Right.
And then from the start, man.
Yeah, man, good start.
Yes. The development here so is that I want to respond to some of the things and just make a quick statement, you know?
Mm.
Yeah, them say it's 3 years to catch Bin Laden.
Them take what?
Them say it's 3 more years to catch Bin Laden.
What that them say?
Yeah, that them a say.
Them say them kill one of them son today.
What's there? Alright, information or misinformation. When it's set up to be attacked, and what is the domino theory that they are putting forward? Right? Domino theory, of course, meaning going forward and taking over the islands and all that.
Yes, yeah.
Is it a 3-year solidification campaign with them depend? It is something to look at. To respond about the Moors, of course the Moors are Muslim about baths and all that. Islam creed that one prays 5 times a day and make salat by washing and so forth. So again, that whole element is something where is part of the tradition. Yeah. In all the denominational forms, it was forced on us. So we must refuse Christianity from that viewpoint. So to empower what the ayah said about the Christian forward. Yeah. Paul, commissioned by the Roman authority, was a soldier and fell on his face to Damascus, which was most possibly a story. We also see that the whole allegorical element, then Christianity came into being. This whole Essene upper row of life of Jesus is not lived as it is now. So it is claimed that this is Paulianity and Romanism and not really Christianity. So
the Essenes.
The Essenes. Right. My statement here so ingoing is that this is the empowerment that we must establish liberated agenda for our children and our future. What is culture? We must define that and live it in an implementational way. What is the agenda for African people? We have sons and daughters of slaves in Colombia, Mexico, Panama, Peru, and black people in Philippines and the atoll. They are looking to us, people here in Jamaica, on some levels, for liberation and an outlook. For example, in Hawaii, they have joined reggae to the traditional rhythms to call it Jawaian and play both of them together. In Tonga, the same. So we need traditional culture and to study that element and to pass it forward to a futuristic endeavor.
I'm going to tell you something now with Christianity now.
Got you.
You see, anytime you embrace Christianity, it will allow you to keep your indigenous culture. Because there's no culture in Christianity.
Go ahead.
You see, so what happened now is that if you're African in a certain culture perspective, when you embrace Christianity, you start to see your culture as derogative or as opposed to Christian belief.
Okay.
It's a whole heap of religion, and I can tell you a whole heap of religion that allow you to keep your culture, but still maintain that religious perspective. But Christianity don't allow that. That is why Christianity is so oppressive to indigenous people, especially African people and people of color.
That is true, Muta. But I'm going to show you in one sense that I see them operating side by side. I was in Ghana 17 years ago. And the Queen Mothers and people in Ghana, more so than the rest of the West African countries, have their traditional worship and so forth, yet they are Christians.
Yeah, well, the Santa Maria is something like that, you know.
I'm sorry?
No, I understand what you say, because Santa Maria, out of Brazil and Cuba, it's something like that, where you have the voodoo, but you use the Christian symbols. You see? This come out of the tradition of masking voodoo or masking.
Right.
But it's not really that the people maintain. You see, when I say Christianity do have a culture, because the people they maintain them culture, you know, but them use Christianity to mask it.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah.
And I mean, in all of the traditions from Brazil, Lukumi, Candomblé, and the rest of it, and as they say, Santeria is used, the saints are used to be put in place for the African gods.
Yes.
Yeah, but you know, what I'm saying is that, you know, even until today, it is so locked in where the people are, if you don't choose to be Christian, then people see you as something negative.
Yeah, definitely.
You know? Anyway, yeah, give thanks for that. again, there's an eldership tradition in Ghana, and there's a tradition of what is called soul washing, where purification and initiation is done to embody and bolster the spirit and the people. We need to have a name change, a vast name change, because it empowers the spirit to credentialize higher thought factors within our people. Again, it is the people. As a people, 3/5 of a human being is unacceptable. We must look forward to reject a lot of this belittling. I'm sorry?
The 3/5 thinking.
Yes, I am. And the youth them to learn a skill. Academic is just part of the solution. My last statement is East to meet West. We must use the cross-cultural connection from Zimbabwe and Angola and Brazil and the Kikongo and Bakongo tradition to foster what we have here so in terms of our drumming and our cultural ideas and share them and learn greater essence to that cultural reality so that we can be more harmonized as one people globally. Yes?
Yeah, man.
So, Mutabi, thank you.
You thanks.
Blessed, yeah?
I did.
One love.
Yeah, man. The Virgin talking nice talk. Yeah.
Say, enough respect, enough blessing to Jesse.
Yes.
In when the man called from the gang war thing.
Yes.
Because gang war thing to stop and people afraid to get up and talk who are build them thing in Jamaica for a long while. You understand me? I say, more love to the eye, more love to the brother, and just keep the faith and the good work and give thanks.
Yeah, man. Give thanks, Virgin.
Yeah, man. More power. Yeah?
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to come out here now. This is the Cutting Edge and IRFM. So I say give thanks to the ones that who stay with me. The journey from 20 past 11 till now. And we want to tell people that next week we're going to present part 2 of this bishop, Anglican bishop talk. Next week we're going to talk about the virgin birth. Understand? And as I say, we want to bring back a tape name, don't know much about the Bible. We want to bring back a tape in December. Yeah. Understand? So, but there with you. This is the Cutting Edge and IRFM coming through. We give thanks to the moment. It's always a serious honor to just talk these talk and walk these walk. I will know say no other radio program now will present it this way. You know see it. So if we are commissioned to do it, we just get commissioned to do it. Just so it go.